All right, so let's see if this is working. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello. Oh, there's a little bit of a delay here with my live streaming. Okay, there we go. Now we're back. All right. I know I didn't really announce this live stream, but I just felt like it was time to do another live stream. So hopefully some of you did get the notification a little bit late, but I'm here. Oh, hello, John. Yay, nerds in the house. Yes, I love it. And is it Dara? Dara? Hello, thanks for joining me. Nice to see you. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Tell me if YouTube announced this because I accidentally, because again, I'm not really good with technology. I accidentally had my my time zone set up for PST, so it said that I was not going to be streaming until 3 hours from now. So I'll learn that for next time. So hello, Faisal. Is that I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And Jose and Jack and Damien. Hello. Thanks so much for joining me today. Oh, good. I'm so happy some of you are on here. I was worried that nobody would show up. So I'm here to answer your questions. Feel free to start asking questions. Otherwise, I will talk and let you know what's been going on with me. So I had a performance. I teach an a cappella singing class to teens, and we had a little performance on Friday, and it was very exciting. And we performed a pentatonic piece. And if you guys know pentatonics at all, their arrangements are pretty challenging, especially for singers who aren't really skilled or experienced in singing harmony and in just performing in general and stuff. So I found myself having to fill in the gaps for them, fill in the weak spots where we were struggling to get enough, we'll say, loudness into the sound and enough balance. And this is my second year teaching this class, and it's always a challenge. So I found myself having to sing soprano and tenor and bass parts. And if you've ever tried singing a little bit too low in your range for a long period of time, it can really kind of be tough. And I was finding that I was getting a little bit of, I felt as though I was stacking up breath pressure as I was trying to sing, because I was trying to get too much weight into my sound and trying to really just beef up that lower end, because so there were 6 of us, 5 of us females, and 1 tenor. So we really needed to round out that bottom end a little bit. And so just as a word of caution, if you're singing in a tessitura that you're not really the most comfortable in, just really make sure that you're using a lot of really good technique and you're trying to find the balance. And for me, I found that if I just added a little bit of twang and I didn't focus so much on trying to get the loudness out there, that I was able to kind of feel like I wasn't stacking up that breath pressure anymore, and I could kind of breathe a little bit more effectively. Hello, everyone. Studying for exams. That's a great name there. We have Michael. Hello. Let me know where you guys are from too. That's always exciting to see where this is streaming to. I'm in the Boston area, or outside the Boston area, and we had some snowfall yesterday, and so I should have put a picture up here, but we've got a little bit of snow on the ground, about 3.5 inches, not too much. But let's see, we have Liam. Hello, Liam. You're lucky enough to go down to Abbey Road to record last year. Wow, that's so exciting. And things were going really well, but my voice feels a lot more labored now, and it's like I can't sit on the notes when going up. Have you done a lot of recording? Do you have a lot of experience doing recording? Because I find that we get better at it as we do it, and the first experience in the studio, or the early experiences in the studio, can really be really nerve-wracking, and it can lead us to kind of put a lot of pressure on ourselves and sort of use compensatory strategies to cope with the nerves and the stress of knowing that we want to get this right, and it's going to be recorded and it's going to be put out there. And so yeah, let me know if you have a lot of experience, or if you think it was something just technical in nature, that there's something consistently off with your technique, and we could talk more about that. Hi, Lois. Nice to see you here. And who else? Chris. Oh, hi, Chris. I think you were in the last live stream. I can't talk today. Let's see. YouTube always has delay in terms of streaming. That's true. I know. I can see myself on the side here, and it's delayed, and it's really weird. So I'm trying not to look at myself. Hi, it's Chris. It's like romper room. I'm not sure what that means. Is it me? Am I like romper room? All right. I'm looking down here. I'd like to know how to develop volume. Simply supporting doesn't do it for me. Oh, that question's really timing. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Timely. I just finished editing a video on how to sing louder without strain. And I didn't get into the specific practical aspects of it per se, but I did give an exercise. And one of the things that I talk about in that video is bringing the volume actually down a little bit initially, because I think what happens is sometimes we try to push and strain and force that loudness out before we've really achieved balance throughout the entire system. Balance with the breath, balance with the resistance to the breath, that vocal effort or glottal compression that we need to sort of resist that air pressure, and then also how effectively we tune our resonator. If we're not tuning that effectively, that can lead to an inefficiency with the vocal folds. And if the vocal folds are pressing too much and squeezing too much to try to make that loud sound, we're going to build up even more breath pressure, and it becomes this really imbalanced kind of technique that we develop. And so what we need to do sometimes is actually what seems kind of counterintuitive is to actually bring the loudness way down initially, or at least to sort of a moderate loudness, and then make sure that we have balance in our technique with all three aspects of our voice system before trying to turn the dial up on the volume dial. If we don't have that balance, we're going to push and strain and force and squeeze and try to make that loudness happen. So it's one of those things that I think I can't really just say, here, do this, because you really have to take a look at the whole system. How balanced is everything working? And so sometimes when you bring it down to that moderate, like energized speaking level, then that will actually help you figure out where the imbalances lie, and then move forward from there, gradually building that range where you can sing with that moderate level, and then over time be able to increase the intensity, be able to increase the loudness without also inducing tensions and straining and pushing and pulling and trying to make that happen. I think too often we admire singers who have really big, powerful voices, and then as a result we try to emulate them and we try to sing just like they do, without realizing that they've probably been doing this for a long time, and so they've built up the strength and the endurance and the balance in their technique, and they've also probably got, well, in some cases they may have more naturally robust instruments than our own, and so we kind of expect different things of our instrument. We expect them maybe to perform a little bit differently than this voice, or the same way that this voice is, even though the voice is a little bit different. And also, you know, they've got amplification and possible other studio effects on their voices and things like that that kind of give us a false sense of the level of loudness that we're actually hearing. I always say, you know, just sort of work smarter, not harder. And if you get everything in balance and you get the right amount of vocal effort balanced with a high enough subglottal pressure but not too high, and you get a good resistance here, and then you tune things effectively here, like for example with twang, right, so that the voice just kind of, you're tuning to those high frequencies so the voice just kind of cuts really easily, you can basically make big and powerful and loud sounds without having to engage excess muscle, excess tensions. So that's kind of, we'll leave it at that for now. And then when that video comes out, there's an exercise there that you can try, and hopefully that will work. Yeah, you're right, but supporting more is not necessarily going to be the solution. It's really all about achieving balance and tuning things effectively. Let's see. I usually only thought that in... Okay, Jack, I'm not sure where, let me look back to, you know, if you guys are talking to each other in here, just put the @ symbol, and then the person's name will kind of pop up a little bit if you start to type it in, and that way I know if you're talking to me or to somebody else. I love when you guys chat amongst yourselves. That's really great. I really want you guys to build a nice community of people who get to know each other and really support each other. But yeah, you said funny you thought it was only in the higher range. I'm trying to find that. Funny, usually only thought about that in terms of higher range. So I don't know if you were talking to me or somebody else. So I'm sorry, Jack. Please let me know in the comment section. I know the theory of supporting, but struggling to actually support. That's a good one. I think we can't isolate support and just treat that like it's something that we can train in isolation. Treat it like something that we can just kind of train by itself, and that everything else going up the system is going to just fall into place automatically. It's not the cure-all for our vocal ills. We need to have that in balance with what's happening up here, and then also, with how the resonator filters that sound. And so, we want to, some of the exercises that I've shared in some of my videos on breath management, the Farinelli exercise, and those like hissing and those are really great for training a degree of resistance between the inspiratory muscles and the expiratory muscles, the inhale and exhale muscles. There's sort of an antagonist relationship between those two sets of muscles, those two groups of muscles, and we need to keep this sort of dynamic, flexible balance. When we're singing louder, we'll be using more of the exhale muscles. When we're singing softer, we'll be using less of the exhale muscles, and hopefully maintaining a degree of openness here. But support is, it's one of those things that really takes time to develop. We have to kind of figure it out I start with exercises, but ultimately, yes, we need to at some point transfer what we're learning in the exercises to the actual songs that we're singing, because those songs are going to challenge us further. And I think really for me, just to summarize my own approach, is always maintaining a degree of openness with the ribs. If we lose that, we're going to tend to go and squeeze too much, and then we're going to over support, we'll say. We're going to be using too much muscular support in trying to generate that sound, and that tends to cause that sort of snowball effect going up the system. Things start to get a little too tight and pressed and squeezed and constricted here, and everything falls apart. So you have to kind of train it all in balance. But if you want to focus on breath management, and some people do, and they need to initially, it's okay to to just kind of do some of those exercises that I outlined in those breath management videos. Seems really weird that I can't hear myself. Glasgow, hello. Denmark, yes. It's probably a little on the colder side there for you guys too, right? Let's see. Sorry. Jackie, hello Jackie, nice to see you here. So I noticed that I can feel dizzy after singing for a while. I tried to monitor my breathing. Is that a sign of bad technique? Yeah, there's I feel like for some singers, they can really kind of, I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about my performance and having to sing so much in the lowest notes of my range, that sometimes we get this feeling of sort of stacking up breath pressure, and we can almost even hyperventilate. I had issues with this some time back when I was first learning to kind of extend my M1 coordination and the range that I was using that coordination in, and I was just like, I felt like I was just sort of like almost hyperventilating. I was like, just kept, taking in full breaths. And I think that's one thing that might be happening, and it's really common, is that you're maybe taking in a complete breath renewal with every single inhale, and you don't always need a complete breath renewal. If it's a short phrase, as is the case in a lot of commercial styles of music, we don't have incredibly long phrases. We probably don't need a complete breath renewal. Even if we're belting it out, and we need that high subglottal pressure, we don't always need a really complete full breath renewal. If you're singing classical music and you're singing these long extended passages, that's a different story. So it could be that. It could be that you're actually just taking in too much breath every time, and you could be just sort of hyperventilating, basically. But yeah, sometimes one of the other things that I love to have my students do when they're feeling this and they're feeling that they're stacking up breath pressure, feeling a little dizzy, is I have them, if they're singing a song, I have them put an extra measure between the vocal phrases. It's a little bit hard if they're using backing tracks, but we can just shut them off and sing a cappella at least for a while. Or if they're accompanying themselves, they stop and then they leave themselves 2 to 4 more beats even, just to be able to reset their breathing and make sure that they take that breath in a really calm manner, right? And then so, you sing a phrase and you stop and you focus for a second on your breath. All right, expansion, got that good posture, so I'm in a good alignment to be able to open up the ribs and let the diaphragm descend. And it's a really calm breath. And then what you can do is you can start kind of cutting that extra break in half, that extra space that you're allotting for that breath renewal, as you start to find that you're able to take a more relaxed and lower breath more readily without having to think so much about it and without reverting back to old habits, old patterns. Hopefully that helps. Virginia, no diphthongs allowed. But can I talk in like a really southern drawl? Okay, nice to see you live. Oh yes, hi Jose. I know it's been about a month since my last and first live stream. I've been wanting to live stream during the week and I'm so nervous still about the technology. I'm so clueless. I really am clueless. And we even struggled a little bit today to get this going, and that was with my husband's help. And so if I'm having troubles with my husband helping me, there's no way I could do this on my own. Eventually I'll be able to do this more frequently. So Liam, yeah, I've recorded loads of times, okay. But it seems to be after I came off tour and can't shake it now. So I wonder if, yeah, just the touring schedule is maybe a little bit intense and maybe your voice was a little bit fatigued after that, which is often the case. A lot of those singers, that's why you hear, Adele, I don't want to get into this whole discussion of Adele and just make my own guesses as to what really went on. But, a lot of teachers are really feeling as though, it's just that touring schedule is just so much for the instrument to be gigging 5-6 nights a week, these long 2-3 hour concerts, a lot of energy. And then on top of that, it's not even just the performances. So it's even if they had amazing, like stellar technique, they're not sleeping well, they're on the road a lot, they're on planes and, tour buses, whatever it might be. They're probably not eating the best, they're not in their usual rhythm of life. And that can really have an impact on the body, but even just emotionally, right? That stress that you feel. So maybe, give yourself a little bit of time just to kind of recover. And maybe next time that you have to go into the recording studio, don't do it right off the back of a recording of a tour, because your voice might need just a little bit of a recovery period. And your body just in general needs the rest and the hydration and kind of get back into the normal rhythm of life and the swing of things. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Is it Dara? First question. Oh, that means there are more to come. First question is, I have a piece I'm singing for juries. Hans larynx. Okay, and I find that the lower notes, I need glasses apparently, which is most of the song, is kind of dead, under-supported, not properly projected. You're speaking to me. Yeah, that was, as I said in my a cappella performance on Friday, it was tough. But what I found was if I didn't try to push for loudness, and if I added a little bit of that brightness just intentionally, then it feels much better here and it sounds much better and it carries better without my having to increase my muscular effort significantly. Excuse me. And I'm a little bit dry. But often what happens when you're lighter voiced and or higher voiced as a singer is we will tend to try to push those notes out, right? Because we know that that's not the strongest part of our ranges. It's not the part that carries the most effectively. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat now. It's just great timing too. So you see under-supported, not properly projected. Yeah, again, I think if you tune your resonances a little bit brighter, that there's sort of that rule that we have that, as you go higher, you go deeper into the vowel and you add some depth and warmth into the sound to avoid shrill kind of qualities. And then as you go lower, you add some brightness to the sound, and that sort of unifies the scale, evens out the timbre across all the pitches. And so I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I suspect it's what a lot of us female singers especially experience when we're singing kind of really low in our ranges, where it's not necessarily where our voices love being, sort of dead. I suspect you're probably just kind of, pushing, or what often happens too is we go, and we try to, like, the larynx just lowers and it kind of creates a sort of hollow, cavernous kind of sound. It's not pretty. Cincinnati, hello, Chris. Another question, been working on it, but the low notes are not vibrant enough, and crescendoing and decrescendoing on it can be a pain. Yeah, again, I think if you focus on not on trying to project, not on trying to push for loudness of those notes, you're and just kind of turn up the dial, like that treble dial, right? Turn up the twang a little bit, or the brightness. I don't know if you sing in classical or commercial styles, but if you turn that up a little bit, it'll offset that balance, that tendency for us to be a little bit too dark and on that bottom end. And as for the vibrancy, the vibrato, I can't talk, the vibrato in the sound, you're not going to hear it quite as much in the lower range if you're not as loud, right? The vibrato tends to be most pronounced when we're singing more loudly, and that's just because the sound source is just louder in general. Sorry, I've got toilets flushing in the background here. So I hope that helps. But as for crescendoing and decrescendoing, I think, again, if you keep it in balance, you keep some twang in the sound, you're not going to be as likely to push, and then you're going to get maybe a little bit more vibrancy just kind of naturally. Where should you start when you want to learn to sing but not know where to start? All right, that's a great question. Is it, I don't know if it's Michael or Mikael? I'm sorry, I don't want to butcher your name. That's a great question. So my teacher, when I first started, my first teacher, his emphasis was on a few things. He had these sort of steps that you would take. And the first was learning to get a lift. So basically learning just to kind of get that little lift of the zygomatic muscles, the cheeks that smile up under the eye, right? And that prevents things from getting too kind of dull and flat sounding. And it's not connected by any kind of muscular attachment, but a lot of singers feel as though when they get that lift, it kind of helps the soft palate to sort of stay up. I think it's really associated with positive emotions, and that in turn sort of prompts the soft palate to sort of elevate a little bit. Hopefully I'm not falling too behind on all these questions here. But so there was that, and then the next thing that we spent a lot of time on was vowels. Vowels, 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 vowels. Getting a purity of vowel. When I talk about purity of vowel, I'm talking about just starting with at least the 5 pure Italian vowels. They're called that just because they're not diphthongized, and they're they're vowels that really are common to all languages as well. But when we're talking about purity, it doesn't mean that we can't modify those vowels for pitch, but we're really talking about sort of this, we don't want a distortion in those vowels. We want them to sound like the vowels that we're aiming to sing, first of all, especially when we're within speech inflection range. And we want to listen. If you're kind of doing this on your own, it's kind of tough, but maybe you use some sort of recording device. Play it back. I would play it back immediately so that you correct your mistakes. You're always welcome to send me recordings as well. I'm not always prompt in responding and getting back to you, but if you're concerned about your vowels and whether or not you need to work on them, then feel free to send me some samples of your singing. I'd be happy to do that for you. Just scales would be fine, or even little passages of songs. The vowels, making sure that when you're singing E, it sounds like E, and that your tongue isn't doing funky things. And that's going to take you really far, I think, with your singing, because once you get those vowels down, so many other things start to fall into place. And the breath, I mean, again, I don't think we always need to train the breath in isolation, but that was something that we talked about as well. We focused on, I think it was actually the third step, was kind of getting that connection down here, making sure that, you know, we're giving the vowel adequate breath, not too much or not too little. But I would start with getting the vowels, making sure that your vowel qualities are right. You know, I'm in a discussion with some other teachers on this functional voice book club, and we're discussing a Cornelius Reid article in which he talks about learning to be able to listen functionally to our singing instead of just sort of aesthetically. I think it's a combination of what have you, and being able to sort of self-diagnose and based on how things sound and how things feel. But, you know, his big thing is really not sort of trying to micromanage and consciously manipulate the body to try to make beautiful singing happen, but instead to sort of get in your head this accurate tonal concept. There's this concept of how the vowel is supposed to sound, and making sure that what's coming out of us, out of here, is actually matching that tonal concept. And it's definitely easier said than done, because there are so many things that can stand in our way. There's so much like emotion and mental, I won't call it baggage, but these things that just, this clutter that can stand in our way of actually being able to imagine a correct vowel, imagine a beautiful sound. But the vowels, yeah, the vowels are really key, I think, to building a nice sounding voice, and some other aspects of technique will definitely fall into place on their own. All right. I want to make sure I'm not falling too far behind here. You are going to bash zone. I have no idea what that means, Polly Pocket Collector. If you want to make any corrections to any typos, please feel free to do so. All right. Let's see. Lois. Hello, Lois. Have been working on head voice and trying not to sound classical or churchy. Would vowel modification help, or is it an air pressure issue? I know, 2 questions in one. That's okay. Yeah, I have a head voice video coming out too, in which I talk about making a classical sound that isn't, making a head voice sound that isn't classical. It's sort of a little bit more head mix, in the sense that the vowels sound a little more speech-like, rather than in classical music they sound a little more acoustical. And I have my friend Professor Michelle Breet coming back to talk about classical head voice for me, and demonstrate that, because that's what she does. That's her area of expertise. So I've got some really great videos coming up in the next couple weeks. But yeah, I think the key to that is allowing yourself to be in that M2 function. That's all right, but ensuring that you it's kind of a different setup, right? When you're singing classical head voice versus contemporary head voice, I feel that in classical, there's definitely, you've got that lower larynx, and you know, the pharyngeal walls are more dilated and the soft palate is more lofted. Whereas when we're singing in contemporary styles in head voice, we're, I won't say narrowing, but there is a degree of narrowing. It's narrower than it is in classical. The setup is a little bit different. Hopefully we're not having issues with the video streaming, because I keep getting a little yellow light saying that my stream health is maybe a little bit poor. Sorry, I'm very distractible. So yeah, I think for me, this is what I had to learn too, because I did train with bel canto technique, even though I've always sung in contemporary styles. What I found I did was I always wanted to sort of over darken and go a little bit more classical with my sound, but it really didn't match the kind of sounds that I wanted to make in the music that I was singing. And so I've had to learn to stay with more speech-like values for my vowels, which is hard. It's hard when you get up there and when you're not trained to do that, but maybe gradually extend that range where an E still sounds fairly close to a speech-like E. You're going to have to make some adjustments as you go higher. There will be some modification that takes place, but I think it may be less radical a modification in contemporary styles than it is in classical, because really in classical, because that voice is unamplified, there's a need to tune that resonance far more effectively to really maximize that carrying capacity of the voice. But in commercial styles, we've got microphones. We don't need to necessarily tune quite as precisely and effectively, but you know, I mean, so that really allows us to have more speech-like values and not worry so much about optimizing our resonance tuning. So yeah, just focus on kind of being very speaky about your singing and maybe not sing-songy. I've talked a lot about sort of what I call speak singing, where you're just sort of speaking through the phrases and you don't worry about sounding like you're singing, right? You just sort of talk it like that. And that really helps a lot. That's definitely helped me a lot in trying to make, especially for musical theater, making, you know, really clear speech-like sounds above my break even. So hopefully that helps, Lois. Does vocal fry somehow help the volume? Oh gosh, you know, there are so many different opinions about vocal fry, and I hold one that is not the most popular. I With vocal fry, I'm falling behind, sorry. With vocal fry, especially in the lower range, the vocal folds are just very slack and compact, and so they're sort of rattling off of each other in kind of an aperiodic way, in that the vibration is not perfectly periodic and rhythmic, we'll say. And a lot of teachers really like to use this to sort of help release excess tensions and pressed phonation. And I have used it at times. It's sometimes used in speech language pathology to help alleviate some of the, you know, like muscle tension dysphonia and just other vocal hyperfunction. And so, and I've lost your question here because I realized that I was let's see, developing vocal fry somehow help the volume. So I am not convinced that vocal fry necessarily directly impacts the loudness of our singing. But if you're somebody who tends to try to make loud notes by pressing and squeezing and forcing and straining, then maybe there might be a place for some vocal fry in your training, and maybe starting with the fry and going clearer, and it might help you find better balance on the clearer portion of the note. But yeah, I'm not sure if it really directly impacts volume. I think what it can do is just help balance things out for those who are sort of hyperfunctional in their approach. Chris, I have a question. Lyric tenors sing mostly in their head voice, right, or chest? You know, I think it really depends. I think the modern tenors, it's estimated, have a really long close quotient in which the vocal folds are together for longer, and it's estimated that singers like, you know, Pavarotti are still using a fair bit of M1 or chest voice engagement in their singing, even all the way up to their, you know, B's and C's. I don't know exactly how true that is. I'm not sure how easily or perfectly measurable those ratios are. So I think, you know, I think that there are ways to definitely strengthen the head voice coordination by having a fair bit of glottal compression, using that sort of cartilaginous compression that's, you know, from the arytenoids at the back, as opposed to using the medial compression of the TAs, the, you know, just pushing the vocal folds together there to create that full sound. So at some point, yes, the TAs kind of release a little bit. They, you know, they still continue to provide sort of counter tension with those CT muscles, those head voice muscles. But I'm not even sure how to answer that question, because I think it really depends on, I mean, are we talking classical, or are we talking, you know, commercial as well? Because yeah, head voice doesn't always mean that it's only produced in with this like CT dominance, we'll say. But, you know, yeah, I don't even know how to answer that. I'm sorry. I don't know how to answer that effectively, because I think that the jury's out a little bit still on how much those TAs are actively engaged in head voice singing, and I guess at what part of the, you know, head voice are we talking? Are we talking, you know, G4, or are we talking C5? You know, it may be a pure chest at C5 as opposed to G4, where it's kind of more of a different kind of a balance, I guess, between the chest voice muscles and the head voice muscles. I'm sorry, I didn't do a good job of answering that. Let's see. ERI444. Does the tessitura of a voice change throughout the day, week? Meaning, is it possible that on Monday the voice feels more comfortable at the upper end of my range, but then the next day at the lower? Yes. There is a little bit of fluctuation from day to day with our voices. It really shouldn't be significant. It shouldn't be that, today I'm comfortable singing in the third octave and tomorrow I'm comfortable singing in the fifth octave. It should not be that radical. If it is, there's probably something going on with how you're using your voice in your performances or your practices that are causing you to maybe fatigue a little bit and your voice to kind of feel like it needs a little break from singing with that kind of intensity or whatever it might be in that part of the range. So oftentimes what will happen is if singers are singing really poorly in the upper range in their head register and they're really using a lot of force and strain, they'll struggle to sing in the middle part of the range, for example, and they'll do much better in the lower part again. And so I think this really comes to training balance in the voice, always training balance. Excuse me. And also, every practice session, make sure that if you've been spending a lot of time focusing on the upper range, head voice, or belting, that you take a little bit of time during that practice and kind of reverse that, and then spend a little time singing and working your lower end, singing in lighter function as opposed to belting, allowing your voice to transition earlier into M2. And what happens there is you're sort of, I'll say you're kind of cross-training, but you're also just giving the voice a little bit of rest so that you're not overdeveloping one part of the range or developing it out of balance and then neglecting the rest. And I think if you start to really make sure that you're sort of cross-training and doing all of that balancing out every single practice session, you'll probably find that you have less and less of that daily variation so that it comes down to a matter of, a note or two on either end where it feels like, okay, so my C5 is not as balanced as it was yesterday, but it's not that far off. Hopefully that helps. Jack. Oh, this is to Jackie Miller. Maybe you release too much oxygen comparing to how much you inhale. Yeah, that's quite possible. Oh, and she responds, that's possible. Ever felt, I've never had this problem before, but recently when performing, I get scared about high notes and somehow I don't let myself use technique and sounds good, meaning doing embellishments and stuff. I mean, are you at a different level in terms of your performances? Like, are they getting a little bit more high stakes? Are you feeling more pressure about those performances? Or maybe have you started adding different songs to your set list that maybe you're not quite technically ready to sing and you're starting to feel that pressure and that worry about not being able to sing those notes and those embellishments and whatever? Take a look at what's behind that anxiety, because there's obviously something there that's causing you to feel like to sort of second guess yourself, to second guess your technique, that maybe is making you nervous, so that when we get nervous, really anxious about performing, we sort of start to abandon our technique. And I have a video coming out too on Stage Fright. It's a long video, so it's taking me a while to edit. But talking about some of my strategies for coping with anxiety that I have on a day-to-day basis, not just performing. I have performance anxiety and the smallest things that you wouldn't imagine I'd have performance anxiety with. But yeah, just I don't know why I'm doing this. All right, wringing my hands, nervous habit. All right, so yeah, you asked the second question, and it's not about lack of practice and higher range is the best part of my voice. What could I do? Again, figure out what is at the root of that, psychologically, emotionally. What is going on? Are you feeling like maybe, you're getting better and maybe you're so much closer to being, where you want to be, or maybe you're on the cusp of being able to do this professionally, or maybe take your career to the next level, and maybe that's making you feel a sense of anxiety about what you're doing. And again, have you started adding more technically challenging songs to your repertoire that maybe you're not as confident singing or you're not as ready to sing? Figure that out, and then adjust accordingly. If it means lowering a key of a song or removing it temporarily from your set list and replacing it with a different song that you're more confident with, maybe when you step out on stage, lead with a song that you're super confident with and you know that you can sing super, super well, so that you've shaken off some of the nerves by the time you get to that challenging song. Yeah, keep me posted on that. See, Jackie, I think that's what's going on. I'm probably thinking about my breathing, and that probably leads to overbreathing. Absolutely. Sometimes when it comes to, I would say, just leave things well enough alone when it comes to so many parts of our singing or so many aspects of our technique. Sometimes if we overthink, we try to micromanage and over manipulate everything, and then we end up falling out of balance where things were maybe possibly going just fine. Our breath management strategy was working adequately for our needs, and then we start fiddling with it, and it's a mess. John, do the thing you fear, face the beast. Oh, yes. I'm all for that. Is it you throw? Hello. I don't think I've seen you here on a live stream before. Then again, I've only had one live stream before this. As I go higher, even in M2, I feel pressure somewhere around the soft palate, and my soft palate raises, resulting in hyponasality. Why do you think this is, and do you have any advice? That's really interesting. Typically what happens is we have the opposite effect where we want to kind of let a little bit of nasality come into our voices just to kind of alleviate some of that pressure that we're feeling. So being that you're having the opposite result there, is maybe what you can do is start introducing those nasal vowels into your training. I have a video on French nasal vowels, which we use the and you can just do the and let that nasality happen. And maybe if you're consciously focusing on keeping that, you may find that you're opening up that resonating space of the nasal cavities when you want that there. I mean, that would be my big piece of advice. But if you're feeling pressure somewhere on the soft palate, I wonder too if you're so the soft palate is connected via tissue and muscle with the base of the tongue. And so I wonder if perhaps you've got some tongue or jaw tension that actually may be kind of pulling down on the soft palate, and then you're trying to take it in the opposite direction. I don't know, it's maybe less plausible, but it's possible. So just some exercises where you sort of learn to release that. Just you could even try taking your tongue and curling it like that up onto the roof of the mouth, curling it back, and then you're singing like an vowel, like good. Doesn't sound pretty. It's not going to be a musical sound, but what it's doing is it's kind of keeping that tongue from like pulling forward. And what you may find is that you really become aware of tension that you weren't aware of before. And if you feel like it's too tension inducing, or you become too acutely aware of those tensions, you can just try maybe even humming with the tongue tips lightly between the lips. Just I'm not all warmed up today. All right, hopefully that helps. Jackie, you're welcome. I don't know if you're thanking me or somebody else, but Mark, hi Mark, nice to see you here. How to get that ring and not sound rough or out of the twang thing, the yeah, just keeping that brightness in the sound, really. I mean, you don't have to take it to extremes. If you're out of tune, it probably has nothing to do with a lack of ring in the voice. It probably has to do with too much weight or too much effort. Sorry, our stream just went offline there as well. I'm going to end this soon as well. I don't want to be going an hour and a half like I did last time. But yeah, so as I was saying when we went offline, was I suspect that it really doesn't have anything to do with the ring in the voice, but that maybe you're using a bit too much effort here in making that sound. So when we have a lot of vocal effort, a lot of compression at the glottal level, we will get a sound that sounds not only louder, but also has a little bit more bite to it in general. I'm so sorry about the stream, guys. I don't know what's going on. I think my kids are all using different laptops downstairs, so maybe they're using up too much bandwidth or something. But in any case, yeah, so if you... Have you tried twang exercises, Mark? Have you just done exercises like the, like, you know, the wah, 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 just that, you know, babies cry, wah, wah, ming, 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 ming. You know, just doing that where you kind of lighten up. If the ming's really nice because it's gonna actually prevent you from carrying up too much weight. I suspect that there's an imbalance more here and with the breath than with a lack of ring. And I think if you fix that balance, maybe even, you know, you're saying you're going up, you're not saying whether you're an M1 or M2, but, you know, just maybe make sure that you're not pushing too much with the breath so that this has a chance to kind of produce a better sound source signal, a more balanced signal, and then the resonator will kind of adjust appropriately in general. I think I'd get burned out trying to do that. Kudos to anyone who is touring. Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness, definitely. It's got to be so hard. I mean, I haven't toured. I've traveled for gigs, but not like on a long tour that's lasted some time. Yes, thanks. That's the right pronunciation. Oh, yay. I got something right today. All right. I don't know how to pronounce the next one. Zlatka? Hello, I'm a beginner, and I was wondering if it's okay to bridge earlier. C4. I don't know if you're male or female, because that seems kind of natural to me. Other YouTube teachers say to expand chest, but it feels like yelling. So depending on if you're male or female, it will be yelling. At some point, and this all has to do with the resonance frequency of the vocal tract and the harmonics of the sung pitch, but at some point you do go into a yell coordination. Some would call that belt or the call of the voice, whatever it might be. So if you're lower voiced, there's a chance that, or even, you know, like a baritone, there's a chance that C4 would start sounding a little bit yell above that. But it depends, I think, on what you're trying to achieve artistically and technically. I was somebody who was taught to bridge earlier. I used to bridge at my lower passaggio, which is E4, and it made for a much smoother transition. I had no break. I had a fair bit of seamlessness in my scale and an evenness, a unification of that scale. It sounded very consistent across all pitches. However, it didn't allow me to make the kinds of sounds that I really wanted to make, professionally viable sounds. And so I've had to learn to extend chest voice, but there are healthy ways to do that. And so I would not be in a rush as a beginner to extend that range. I would make sure, first of all, that you focused on the breath and the vowel, making sure that you get everything in balance first. Because if you try to carry up that M1 function, that chest voice function, any higher than is comfortable right now, you risk fatiguing your voice and running into, you know, other vocal health issues, injury, strain, that sort of thing. So I would make it a really gradual extension. One of the best things to do is to resist that tendency for our voices to get louder and louder and louder and louder as we go higher. And then, I mean, that's certainly, I think, the most effective way of training it. It's not necessarily the fastest way, but I think if we bring our loudness level down to sort of a moderate loudness level, moderate dynamic, then what happens is the voice kind of starts to figure itself out, where we can extend that M1 range without always going into a yell or shout. Hopefully that helps. Mark, why and how to have a low larynx when singing high notes in R&B and pop? Well, you know that mum 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 exercise that we hear a lot in like speech level singing and singing success. That's a great exercise for that, because it's not a high intensity sound, and the mum 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 mum, it's actually it's coaxing the larynx down into this sort of neutral to low posture, not excessively low, but you know, they talk about sort of like a dopey sound. You don't want to go too crazy dopey with it, because then you start to sound sort of dull and, you know, lackluster in your tone. But as you move higher, the key is not to go mum 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 mum, where you're going mum 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 mum, right? You don't want to like splat and open that, but you also don't want to change the vowel to like a ma 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 ma. My singing is terrible today. So you want to keep the mum 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 mum. It says mum 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 mum. It doesn't go ma 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 ma. right? So I would do that kind of exercise there. You could do that ooh slide, ooh, that I've talked about in a couple of videos before, where you're sort of ooh, you're kind of going deeper into the vowel without exaggerating that per se. Just kind of, I think of the voice sort of arcing down as I go higher. Ooh. So I'm not going ooh, like I'm thinning the sound and I'm getting brighter and the vowels changing. Ooh, ooh. I just kind of add that depth into the sound, or I maintain it. I don't really add it. It's already there. I can relate to that. Vocal recording. I'm a producer and do experience vocal fatigue. I drink coffee, alcohol. Oh, so those are all diuretics. Don't warm up. I'm trying to avoid practicing in advance. Yeah, Jack, that's you gotta be really good to your instrument, because it'll fatigue if you're not careful, and it will rebel. Singing classical overtures. Oh yes, I think you mentioned that. Sorry, yeah. And I'm sorry, Dara, I don't remember the question was, but I think I need to move on because we're coming up on an hour here, and I don't want to lock my kids in the basement for too long. John, let's see, C4 is okay to start bridging. That may be your range. Exactly, yeah. I mean, there are so many different opinions about what we should do. And I know for me, like I went through a period of a few years recently where I felt so much pressure. I was bombarded with these people just preaching late bridging, late bridging, late bridging, late bridging. And my instrument just hadn't been trained that way, and I didn't even know if it could do that. And I felt so much pressure and stress that I was basically like, oh, I'm going to make this happen no matter what. And I was just digging into the sound, and I don't think that I was balanced up here. I just felt like I was beginning to become really self-conscious about my voice, not liking how I was singing. And all those years I liked my voice for so many years, and then I was just like, it really honestly did a number on me emotionally and psychologically, feeling like, oh, I've got to extend this range, I've got to extend it, I've got to extend, oh yeah, I cannot be bridging at E4, I can't, it's not going to work. And and that those imbalances psychologically and emotionally are really potentially detrimental to our technique, because they cause us to do things, to try to force our bodies to do things that they're maybe not ready to do yet. So yeah, be patient with yourself, and if you want to extend M1, it's fine, but you're going to do that gradually over time, and you're going to do it by having balance in your technique, not by pushing and straining and forcing. So if C4 is the place you need to stop, and transition and bridge into M2, that's all right. Be okay with that for a while, even if it's just a temporary place where that's happening. Be okay with that. What is vocal fatigue? So vocal fatigue, some people just say sort of, it's not when your voice just kind of like feels like, ooh, it's had a good workout. Every voice will get to that point when you've been singing intensely or for long enough, your voice will say, okay, I'm done now. I'm ready to take a break. Just like when you go to the gym, your body's like, whew, that was a good workout. I did record a video on vocal fatigue as well some time back, so look that up, Jose, if you want to. But yeah, vocal fatigue though is considered more of like it's more of a medical term, in which the instrument just simply cannot function at the level that it used to function at. This is not a daily thing that happens after a good workout. This is over time, the voice starts to lose its range capabilities. It loses its stamina and endurance really readily, to the point where, you can't sing for as long or as high or as loud as you used to be able to. And the instrument just kind of, it just cuts out really early, and your voice will just kind of stop, or it'll just say it's done far earlier than it used to. That's vocal fatigue. It's something that happens kind of progressively over a period of time. When you aren't fully recovered between sessions, the fatigue starts to build. Yeah, definitely not giving your instrument some vocal recovery time. I know Dr. Dan, by the way, if anybody's around in a few hours, in about 6 hours, I'm going to be on Dr. Dan's Voice Essentials live stream. So I hope you guys will join me then. And we're going to be talking about just some of the real basics of the things that we need to develop, the aspects of our technique that we need to develop as singers and have in balance. So let's see, John Prof, when you're straining too much during a specific session in a way that affects your general voice, causing fatigue so that your voice is, yeah, not at its full potential. Yeah, it's definitely, again, it's not something that's going to happen like just on a one night thing. It's over time. It's just consistently how you're using your voice. Let's see. Every time I move this, I slide down, I start losing stuff. Oh, you're talking about swollen vocal folds. Yeah, it can start with that for sure. They're still under too much work, too little recovery, too intense. Absolutely. Got to balance the work and rest. John, you're making some absolutely great points here. So everybody listen to John. Read his comments. Community needs a demonstration of changing the format. The format? Oh, John, you're going to be so excited about this. So on Tuesday, I am interviewing Kenneth Bozeman, he's a professor of voice, and he's considered an expert in this topic. He's written a couple books, one of which is Practical Vocal Acoustics, and I am going to be doing a collaboration with him, an interview with him on Tuesday, and we're going to talk about the specifics of things. We're going to talk about formants and harmonics and vowel modification and acoustic and other laryngeal registration events that take place for both males and females. And hopefully I'll make sure that he talks specifically about things, and I know that he uses voice analysis software in his studio, and so hopefully he's going to have some really great insight for you. And yeah, we'll definitely get to all that stuff. So formant modification is a great method to change your general tone. Yes, and I'm still working on that series on vowel modification, and I think that the interview with Kenneth Bozeman is going to be a really great, I'll say launching pad, but a really great place to continue moving forward with that series. Go really high in falsetto. It seems like my chest voice was really short compared to, it starts at E2. I guess developing mixed voice. Yeah, there's a lot of debate too about mixed voice and if it exists. I think it does. And there are different versions of mixed voice as well. Lois, totally makes sense. Yes, hard, except I often don't have a mic where I sing. Thanks, SingWise, you're welcome. Looking forward to the videos. Good. Yeah, hopefully they will be helpful. John, addressing somebody else, it takes time, and after a while you can bridge later. Different places, definitely. And I think the bridging in different places really depends too on the intensity level. How loudly are you singing? Because if you're singing really loudly, you can bridge later a little bit more readily, a little easier. Thank you so much. I'll try the French nasal vowel drills, and I'll check for tongue root tension. Oh, you're very, very welcome, youth bro. And Lucas, oh, welcome. I didn't really see you on here earlier, but thanks for your question. Does belting damage our bodies over time, even if we use proper breathing technique? Is there a safe way to belt that doesn't cause any harm? Absolutely, yes. There is a safe way to belt. I'm just until this comes back. All right, we're back. I am going to, it says video output very low, so I'm going to wrap up here. To answer Lucas's question about belting, oh. I'm having such a hard time with the stream. But yeah, there are healthy ways to belt. We can talk about that at some other time. I think I'm just going to have to end this session today. Donna, thank you so much for your compliment on my videos. I appreciate that. And Lucas, you are most welcome. And I hope to see some of you at Dr. Dan's live stream, his live chat in about 6 hours from now. That would be great to see some of you there. And in the meantime, really looking forward to some of your comments and questions on my upcoming videos. Really excited about some of the ones that are coming out really soon. All right, thank you so very, very much today for tuning in and joining me. I appreciate it. All right, we'll